Still Not Listening is the title of the major piece that began this exhibition. The story about Still Not Listening began back in 1989 with the Valdez oil spill. And I was living on the mid-coast of Maine, and I had a neighbor who was in daily communications with people in Alaska trying to get equipment sent there, and was going through all kinds of red tape, and it was just a disaster in many ways. And so I was getting these daily reports as to what was happening and what was not happening there. And it was, very concerning to everybody. At that time, I was working on a maple burl wood sculpture, which is the material that I prefer carving in, maple burls. And it was the story of three shorebirds. And there was going to be one male bird with its wings outstretched doing their ritual mating dance, where they flutter their wings, trying to look really cool. And there was going to be another bird feeding, and then one sitting on a nest. Well, I had the male done with its wings out, and I had the other one feeding. And it was at that moment when I had the thought to change this into an environmental statement of what was happening in that moment. So I decided to sculpt the third bird with its wing outstretched on its back, caught up in an oil slick. And so I got the carving done, and then I took a caulking gun, which was rather symbolic, and put black vinyl caulking in it, and I spewed that black goo over areas of the sculpture. And I was a hippie in the 60s, and we were involved with a lot of happenings, as we call them. And that usually was metaphoric examples of using art to explain a scenario that was taking place in the world. So this to me became like my own little happening. I took this beautiful piece of carving that I'd spent much time creating, and I spewed all of this black goo onto it. So it was very personal to me to do that piece. Then in, let's see, it was the Gulf oil spill in 2010. And I was looking at the piece in my studio, and I thought of David Wagner, who I'd known for many years. And I called David and I said, I think it's time to bring Still Not Listening back out into the public's eye. He totally agreed. And he said, I'm going to give Bob Bateman a call and Kent Ulberg, painter and sculptor, who also had done pieces during the Valdez oil spill. And he called them and they said, count us in, we're on board to do this. And that was the beginning of Environmental Impact, the first one. And it toured for, I forget how many years across the United States. And then David regrouped the show as Environmental Impact 2, brought in some more artists and changed the exhibition. And as you know, that's been touring all over the United States, even in Canada, but that's how it all began, was with that phone call to David and my enthusiasm for seeing this happen. So he got enthused and everyone got behind him. I do think about it a lot, obviously. I think probably everybody does to some degree. I I don't know. I fear for humanity. I fear for a lot of animals and wildlife. The planet is going to be here. The planet will survive. The environment will build itself back no matter what humans have done to destroy it. And we've done way too much. But as an artist, and having been involved with these environmental issues for most of my life, in one degree or another, I think it's important that we continue to exercise ourselves as visionaries. Artists have always been considered visionaries. whether they're painters, sculptors, or writers, poets, and songwriters in particular. There's so much in the music world that has vision to it and can be inspiring. So I think that's important to look at ourselves as visionaries. I've worked with a gallery in Rockland, Maine for 45 years. It's been a wonderful experience. I used to live there. And this gallery, as its motto, is beauty shall redeem the world. And I love that thought. So for me, I don't do a lot of angered paintings or sculptures like Still Not Listening or The Ploy. What I strive to do is to bring beauty into the world. And I think that's still very important, to produce beauty for the mind's eye. And when we need to do some sort of symbolic work to represent what's occurring on the planet, then I think it's important to do that too, if we're particularly moved to do so, as I was with Still Not Listening and The Ploy. But for me, just to do environmental pieces of the horrors that are taking shape in the world, I think we get enough of that in the news. And so it's better for me to be providing beauty that can embrace humanity and give us something to enjoy and to look forward to, and to give us hope in the future, and to look at the positive side of everything as much as we can. It's really important. And that's kind of where I come from.
I think hope is one of the most important things we can cultivate. And I do think it takes cultivation. I don't think it's a thing that's stagnant. I think we have to show up to it every day, and sometimes it wanes, and then we build it back up. And there are moments where it seems, there are plenty of moments. I think if one is a person who is looking carefully at research and the stories, again, I don't just mean stories. I mean, there's a lot of narrative in the world and about what's happening to the planet and climate change and the impact. There's a lot that, that feels pretty daunting. And some of that it's a media bias to some extent. I think we choose the lenses through which we see or are fed information. And I think it's very right for us to focus on what is problematic and how we can make significant change and evolution in our ways of approaching all kinds of things, from energy to garbage and everything in between. But without hope, I think it's so likely that people, myself included, then kind of shift to a much shorter term perspective. I think hope helps. It helps me certainly keep my gaze long and broad, and inspired, and be able to see things that the sky and the light shining through the trees is beautiful, and the flock of birds coming through stirs something in me in a way that I can't explain, and reminds me that it matters to do what we can to offset a little bit or a lot of it, whatever we can do to offset, some of what feels like a justly negative narrative, and do something that balances it. I don't think it should go away. So I want to be clear that I'm not just looking for just a sunny picture of how this is all going to work out. That isn't, but I think it can get really weighted on one side. And I think the impact of that for our ability to be creative and action oriented and to work together is lessened if we feel that daunting heavy weight. And hope, to me, feels like the thing that helps grow those things. And I don't have the answer. I don't think there's a single person who does have the answer, but I just it's like kind of love and hope I go back to in my life, and I think I just don't think I'm going to go wrong here, you know? Because I'm not closing anything else out, but when in doubt, like default to those things, to love and to hope. And I think it helps you get to the next step, and then there's illumination somewhere else, and something else comes up, and creative ideas and smart people, and you get to be connected to them because you're in the conversation. So
I think there's plenty of hope for the future. I mean, the environmental consciousness is so powerful right now. And as artists, we help enforce that, the environmental consciousness. I think that's part of our job too. I mean, artists, of course, work selfishly too, and so do I. I mean, I look at my designs and stuff. I use nature as a medium, but at the same time too, you have some responsibility.
It goes up and down a lot. I think, some days, I read the reports and, like see the things that happen in the environment, like currently in 2023, here we had this terrible train derailment, with the toxic materials contaminating the environment. So it's not anything that's going to go away. And so I think that we have to continue to have it on our radar screen, because at some point, in reality, we need nature a lot more than nature needs us. And, we just better hope that nature just doesn't want to wipe the slate clean and we have to start over, because that's going to be a hard lift. So I think we have to stay at it. A lot of really exciting things that are happening. And I read recently that the destruction of the rainforest has kind of stabilized. And I think as more governments give recognition to Indigenous people, I think that has had a really positive impact on that environment. And there's something about the visual arts that really sort of says it. It just really gets to the point very quickly. And I can guarantee you, as an artist, artists put a lot of thought into everything they put on those canvases or into those sculptures. And so I challenge all those young people to try to listen to the voice of that artist, whatever artist they're looking at, and try to hear have a conversation with that artist, because they definitely have things they want you to know.
Need that. I think it's I think, at least for me, it's an important, it feels important. It feels like it's kind of those, it's like one of those, you can't unsee it. Once you've seen it, you can't go back. And it doesn't feel authentic or right to just pretend it doesn't exist. At least for me, I feel like I need to somehow meet it. And if I can be a witness, that's valuable. I'm not going to, my art probably isn't going to change anything, but it can sometimes, this kind of art can make us look at things we don't necessarily want to look at, or wouldn't be able to see, or things we've heard too many times to even absorb anymore. Witnesses are people who make sure the story gets told. A witness is somebody who makes sure that the truth comes through the denial. And creativity requires the darkness in order to reveal the light. And a lot of the world's artists are kind of wounded healers in a way. They're people who are trying to fix something in themselves, and in so doing end up also transmitting that to others. And so art can be for the tribe. Art can be for whatever community you can gather around it, to create a shared experience that's meaningful. And if I can be if as an artist, if I can be part of that, I think I'm doing good work. At least I hope so. What can you do? You just have to do the best that you can. You have to do what you can, and that's all that you can do. But it's best not to be paralyzed, and it's best not to be oblivious, I think, and to know that small differences, small, we make small incremental changes. We touch a few hearts and minds, and that just has to be enough. I mean, that's because that's what we can do. And because we can do that, we need to do that. I feel like there's a moral imperative that if you are an artist, or if you're a creative individual, if you're a scientist or an economist, and you see these things, then you should act on them. You should have the courage of your convictions. You should, even if it seems hopeless, even if it seems fruitless, even if it seems painful, difficult, to really, to know what you believe and to act on it. I heard another hopeful note I heard from another artist was that maybe art has to make us look at the possible horrors and the possible tragedies in order for us to be able to use our imaginations to see how to make things better. We're not going to be able to figure out how to make things better if we're not at least able to put ourselves into reality and open our eyes and see what's happening now and face it. I think we're still in the facing it phase. I frankly don't think that, I mean, I think we know, but we don't know. We don't feel it. And maybe that's just human beings. Maybe it's going to take another Katrina or another BP before, again, we start waking up. But yeah, we got to engage people. We got to remind people that they have imaginations and they have agency, so that we can imagine a better future.
Yeah.
It's up to us. It really is.